In this video, I'll tell you why you don't need to be artistic to paint miniatures. Many people say that miniature painting is an art, and it certainly can fill the space between art and capital A, art, and cover the entire spectrum. All you have to do is search for the word miniatures on Instagram or go to any painting competition pretty much worldwide to see what kind of art people can make in the world of miniatures. So, therefore, you must have to be artistic to paint miniatures, right? Nah. The Oxford Dictionary defines artistic as having or revealing natural creative skill, which is kind of a bit to unpack. The word natural in there makes it seem like it's something which you're born with, and we'll get back to that later. But the word that I really like in that definition is the word skill, because a skill is something that you can learn and practice to get better. And that's exactly how most miniatures get painted, with skill. Now, there are, of course, levels of any skill. Some people are more skilled than others. Usually differences in skill come down to time spent. The more you practice the skill through conscious work, or even like just doing the thing to get things done, right? Spending time, hours, days, years doing these things is what increases your skill. The most important thing to understand is this: it can be learned. It's just how skilled you are at the techniques. Getting more skilled at painting miniatures mostly just comes down to learning and increasing your skill at miniature painting techniques. When you first start, you might see a painted miniature, that's wearing some chainmail, and you'd say to yourself, all those little individual links of the chainmail are painted silver. I can't do that. That must have taken them like all day and the world's like tiniest little brush to paint each of those little individual links on that armor. There's no way I could do that. Of course, then someone teaches you about the technique of dry brushing, and you realize that the person, they didn't paint all those little links individually. They dry brushed the whole area with some silver after first, painting the whole area black and letting it dry and all that stuff. And then boom, painted chainmail done quickly. Once you learn the technique to it, the trick to it, in other words, your painted miniature output gets better step by step. Most miniature painting is just a mix of simple techniques, again, tricks, that you put together in order to end up with like a finished model, right? So there are techniques that are easier to do, and there are ones that are honestly a little bit harder to do, but they're all just techniques, from dry brushing to zenithal highlights, to weathering, to wet blending, and all of the others. They're all accessible with some patience and some practice. Sometimes more practice and sometimes less, depending on the person and the technique. And also, remember, they don't all have to be bangers. Pachow. If you want to start painting miniatures, then of course you understand that they won't all be award winners when you first start out. You need to practice and learn the techniques. However, you also need to understand that they won't all necessarily be award winners in the future either. Most times, you're just trying to paint playing pieces, right? Like you're trying to paint miniatures to use in your tabletop war games. Even award-winning painters take incredible amounts of time to paint those award-winning pieces that they enter in the contests. However, even when an award-winning painter starts painting an entire army to play on the tabletop, they'll still cut some corners and not try to make every single soldier in the army an award winner. There's a trade-off between time spent and quality when working on tabletop troops, and every person's level of trade-off, from the beginner to the most skilled veteran, is different. So, do you need to be artistic to paint miniatures? You do not. It's a set of skills and techniques that anyone can learn to differing levels and abilities, especially depending on how much time that you want to put into it. I've been doing it for a pretty long time, and currently I don't get to paint daily, but I do paint 3 to 5 days a week, and I'm getting better and I'm happier with my tabletop output. But again, that's tabletop output, painting pieces that I want to use to play games on the tabletop. What about high-end display pieces, especially ones that you'd like to try to win a competition with? I think that to be an award-winning display painter, You do actually have to be artistic. It's a very different thing than tabletop quality. Display painting is a capital A art. And not only do you need to be artistic to be very good at it, but I think that you have to have kind of natural creative skill, to refer back to that definition at the beginning of this video. Some people are just born with natural skill in certain things. Natural athlete, natural business person, and natural artists. I was interested in art all through school, and I drew a lot. Loved comic book art. That was kind of my thing. But there were always a few kids in our grade or whatever that were always just leaps and bounds ahead of me and the rest of the kids in class. I went to art camp for a week one summer in high school and came across a couple of kids that were just so much further along than the rest of us that it was crazy. You know what I mean? One was doing these marker renderings that looked like the covers of a Gundam manga. Anyway, and the other one, who was my roommate there at camp, did just amazing comic book hero drawings with just using a ballpoint pen. Now, they certainly practiced their technique, I'm sure, far more feverishly than I did when I was a kid. But I really felt, even at that young age, that they also had just some sort of definite natural skill that put them far ahead of the pack. Now, sadly, it's 30 plus years later. I don't know what either of them are doing now, but if they wanted to be illustrators, I'm sure they'd be excelling at it today. And to be an award-winning display painter, you don't have to have been born with a natural talent, but it does really, really seem to help. But again, that's if you want to compete in the high-end world of display painting miniatures. If that's not your goal, you actually just want to get models that you're proud of on the table and play games with them, then you don't need any natural artistic talent to make it happen. You just need to learn the techniques and spend time doing them, practicing on test pieces if you want, or just practice on your first warband or army and understand that your next warband or army will be even better. And if you want, later on, you could strip your old models that you started with and then paint them better with what you've learned. Don't let your perceived lack of artistic talent stop you from painting your miniatures. It's mostly a learned skill, like anything else that anyone can learn if they spend even a little time, watching YouTube videos and whatnot, and then put those techniques into practice. The most important part is actually trying the techniques that you learn so that you can get better at them. And it honestly doesn't take as long as you might think. So am I totally off base? Must one be an artiste to paint a bunch of skeletons or stormtroopers or whatever to fight your battles? What's the most important technique to start with in your mind? I'd love to see all of your comments down below. If you liked this video, hit the like button as well. It really helps to get the word out, and subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching.